Hello Loomers, my name is Lisa and I want to make a series of videos that will hopefully help people that are new to looming and who have been looming a long time. This will be for the flat drawstring bind off. It was originally created by a wonderful lady named Jeannie Phillips, and her video was posted some years ago, so I thought I would do a more recent video for it. It's the bind off I always use. It gives you this nice neat little star in the middle. For those of you who are using a regular drawstring cast off, you might find that your hats are all really bunched up and they don't lay flat. So I wanted to show you a few. This is done in homespun yarn. And it works pretty well for any stitch. This is a spiral stitch. You can kind of see it starts to spiral around, and I used the flat drawstring bind off as well. So the hat that I have on my loom currently is in homespun. This is by far the most difficult yarn to use because it frays really badly. So you need to make sure that you have a long enough tail at the end of when you get ready to cut your yarn so that you can keep cutting it as it frays, and I'll show you what I mean. So the first thing we're going to do, and this is assuming everyone knows how to knit and purl. If you don't know how to knit and purl, there are basic videos at Loom a Hat to learn how to do this. So I'm doing an E-wrap. So I'm going to E-wrap 2 pegs, 1, 2, and then I'm going to purl 2 pegs. And I'm going to do this all the way around the loom. And you're going to do that for 3 rows. So E-wrap 2, purl 2, all the way around the loom, and it's going to take me a minute because this will be really tight the first row around. So you E-wrap 2 and purl 2 all the way around, and do that for 3 rows, and meet me back here. Okay. I'm coming to the end of my row, and I wanted to tell you, if you have a loom with an odd number of pegs, this is 55 pegs, so it's an odd number. So I will end up with 2 knit and 1 purl, and that is okay. So just adjust it to the pegs on your loom. So if you have to end up with 1 knit and 1 purl, or 2 knits and 1 purl, that's okay too. Okay, I'm coming down to my last few pegs of my 3rd row, and like I mentioned, I am on an odd peg number loom. This has 55 pegs, so it's not divisible by 2 or 4. So I will E-wrap when it gets down to the last 3, these 2, and purl this last one, which leaves me with my first 2 stitches being knit stitches, and that's fine. If you're using a 41 peg loom, I would say when you get down to the last 5 pegs to knit 3, purl 2. So in other words, you'd start out knit 2, purl 2, knit 2, purl 2, till you get to the last 5, then you would knit 3 and purl 2, and that would give you an even number. So I go around and I do an E-wrap, E-wrap, purl, purl, and then I just go back and lift my E-wrap stitches over. That way I know which pegs were E-wrapped and which pegs were purled. Okay, I finished my 3 rows of knit 2, purl 2. Now I'm going to cut my yarn for a bind off. This particular yarn, which is homespun, is very fragile, and after you pull it through loops a few times, this is what happens to it. So I'm going to take extra yarn for my bind off. Ordinarily, you would go around your loom once, twice, and a half, but I'm going to go 3 times all the way around, 3 times, because I will probably, as this yarn starts to fray like this, I will have to cut it as I go along and do my bind off. Once you've cut your yarn, what we're going to do is we're going to take the yarn and we're going to go behind the first 2 knit pegs, the ones we E-wrapped, behind those 2, and then pull it all the way through the purl pegs. So you're going to do a purl stitch, but you will pull the yarn all the way through. which for me is going to take a minute. So then, once again, second peg, it's the same thing, behind the knit pegs, through the purl pegs. So you purl 2 pegs. Now we're going behind the next 2 pegs. You're not doing anything with the yarn, and then pulling it through with a purl stitch, pulling the yarn all the way through. So you're going to do that all the way around your loom. Meet me back here when you get done. I'm getting down to the end, and I wanted to show you what happens to this yarn. So see what's happened to this yarn. So I've really lost that much of it. So I'm going to cut it off, cut this frayed part off so that I can keep binding off. So we're going behind the knit pegs and through the purl pegs. Okay, I'm getting down to my last few. So remember I said because I have an odd peg loom, I did only 2 knits and only 1 purl. So I'll go behind the knits, and I'm only going to come through the 1 purl stitch. If you had a 41 peg loom and you had 3 knits and 2 purls, you would go behind all 3 of the knit pegs and come through the purls. So now we're back to the beginning. So this is my first peg, which was an E-wrap, and I put the yarn through the purls. So I'm going to lift all of the purl pegs off. So knit pegs on, purl pegs off. Knit pegs stay on, purl pegs come off. And do that all the way around the loom and meet me back here. Okay, now you should have lifted all of your purl pegs off and your knit pegs are still on your loom. So when you look at your loom and you start to pull this, you can kind of see it start to tighten. So you want to tighten it a little bit. On this yarn, you have to be real careful about pulling it too much because of the fraying, and it's very fragile and breaks really easily. So you could, if you were using Red Heart Super Saver, you could tug a lot tighter, but with this yarn, we just pull a little bit. Okay, so now we have this a little bit tighter. So now we're going to do just the opposite. So now I'm going to bring my working yarn, which is here, in front of my first peg. Now we're going to pull it through the knit pegs and behind the purl pegs. So all the way through the knit pegs, and we're doing a purl stitch again, always doing a purl stitch. Then now we're going behind the empty pegs. Okay, so behind the empty pegs, then do a purl stitch. You go down, bring it up, and pull it all the way through. Once again, you put your hook into the top, grab the yarn, flip it up, and pull it all the way through. Behind the empty pegs and through the knit pegs. Meet me back here. Okay, so I'm all the way around to my last couple of pegs. I'm going to pull my yarn through these pegs, purl it, purling the stitch. Okay, and I'm going to go behind this one empty peg, and then once again, I'm going to pull it back through again, the first peg. I know it's already been pulled through once. Jeannie said it looks prettier like that to pull it through this peg. All right, now we're going to lift all of the pegs off that are remaining, and you want to save this one for last. Lift this one off last. I'm not real sure why she said to do it that way, but I've just always done it that way. So I'm going to lift off all of the pegs and leave the first peg for last. So once you lift all your loops off of your loom, it should look like this. And what you're going to start doing is very gently start pulling this to where it's tight. Okay, you don't want to pull it all at once, especially with this yarn. Every yarn is not this fussy. It's just this particular yarn that I like to use. But you have 2 circles inside here, And so you've got to tighten up this yarn here, and then you've got to tighten up this yarn. So I do it a little bit at a time, and it's going to take time and practice before you get to where you can get really good at tightening it. But just take your time and try to tighten the inner loops and tighten the outer loops. I turned the hat inside out so you can see a little bit better the two loops that are tightening. So this is basically how your decrease works. So you want to tighten these inner loops and these outer loops here. All right, it takes a little bit of work, but I managed to get everything nice and tight so that these loops are tight and these loops are tight. So when you turn the hat to the right side, which is the side that we'll be showing, you'll have a nice tight drawstring, and it will be flat, kind of make this little star pattern that you can see. Hopefully this will come out fairly clear in the video. And that's your modified bind off. And then all you have to do is take your tail, and I usually weave it through, you know, in and around this little circle here. Thanks for watching.